Recorded live from the secret underground lair of Crimson Cowl Comics and Collectibles, this is the Crimson Cowl Comic Club Podcast.
The following issues may contain spoilers. I don't think muscle cake is a thing, but I am going to internet search it at the earliest opportunity. I'm Anthony.
I'm Kirby.
I'm Katie.
I'm Jim.
And I'm Winston.
Welcome to issue number 273 of the Crimson Cowl Comic Club Podcast. Each and every week we meet here to talk about comic books. We won't have any club discussion this week, but as a little preview for what's up and coming, we just got the first issue of Marvel Unleashed, which is the 4-issue series about the Marvel pets. We're continuing on with the second arc of Once Upon a Time at the End of the World with issue number 8. The one-shot we're waiting on yet for Marvel Age number 1000. The one-shot for Alligator Loki number 1. The one-shot for It's Jeff. I think it's got the Jeff First subtitle in there somewhere. And then the one-shot for My Little Pony Black, White, and Blue. So we have a lot of one-shot discussions coming up on the club. Won't be doing any today, but that's a little preview for what's coming in the next couple months. We will do the weekly reviews in this episode. That's where we go back and forth, talk about the books that we've been reading, whether they're new, whether they're old. We're going to talk about them there. Then in the news segment, I'm going to start with the Fan Expo Chicago 2023 Part 1, talking about my adventures going through Artist Alley at Fan Expo Chicago. And we have a bonus experience because we are joined here by Winston Gambro. If you check your feeds in the video feed, you'll see an interview all about Winston talking about A Haunted House, a love story, the upcoming comic, and we have a whole episode dedicated to him. He's hanging out for the episode here, so he's going to talk about some of his Fan Expo Chicago 2023 adventures as well. And then to wrap up the show, I'll be doing a quick preview from Milwaukee Mighty Con, the September 2023 preview that is happening very shortly, talking about going into that convention and what you can expect from Crimson Cowl Media. So that is the setup for this show. We are going to jump into it. I am talking about a book here that I don't normally pick up. From the X-Men series. This is the third year that they've done the X-Men Hellfire Gala. And while I'm not reading their current books, there's a very special reason why I picked this one up, because there is a variant cover for the introduction or the reintroduction of Kamala Khan, Ms. Marvel, my favorite modern day superhero creation. And she had recently, I had talked about it a while back about her character's recent death and very quick turnaround as she's been resurrected now as a half inhuman, half mutant, kind of taking some of the idea of what we've seen with the MCU and what's happening forward, kind of doing some of that synergy, but also kind of reviving the character for this new era. And this is her first appearance after that death in the Fallen Friend number 1, it was called. So this is X-Men Hellfire Gala 2023. The Fall of X begins here. This is always the biggest event of the season, but this year's will change everything for Krakoa. What is meant to be Mutantkind's biggest night becomes their biggest nightmare as the Fall of X begins. All your favorite X-Men are going to be left reeling after this one. Shocking revelations, stunning betrayals, horrifying tragedy, impossible deaths, and of course, the most glamorous looks of the year, all in one cannot miss package. Now that was a lot of hype. They promised a lot of stuff in that synopsis, and I honestly say that they came through on all of those promises. This was an extremely highly entertaining book. This was a one of those $8.99 books, so it's definitely at least triple size. And what was cool about this, not having followed the X-Men for a while, their line of comics have gotten pretty big over the last couple of years, and I couldn't get all the tie-ins whenever they did the events. But now that Kamala is part of the X-Men history, I'm going to have to start dipping my toes in here. And yeah, this was a pretty fresh, refreshing take on the X-Men. And I checked in with my buddy Sean, who was on this very show one time years ago. He's a huge X-Men fan, so I checked in with him, and he had talked about the X-Men Hellfire Gala, saying that normally they're fairly peaceful events where it's just a lot of just kind of world building, looking at all the collaborations and designs of the characters. We see a bunch of cool covers as all the heroes show up from all around the world, not just the heroes, but even Wilson Fisk, the Kingpin himself, shows up, and he's wearing a very special outfit for the big event. And while these issues have been pretty known to be pretty tame and just kind of fun, basically, there's a lot of tragedy that happens in this, and that was my first question to Sean, because I'm like, all right, is this a normal thing, or do we always expect the party to be interrupted? And he's like, oh no, he's like, this was so. Once again, that synopsis wasn't lying. It set up a lot of big stuff for their upcoming Fall of X. So what I was really excited for going in for the Kamala of it all is that it doesn't waste any time to jump into her resurrection and dealing with Kamala basically coming back to life, not knowing what had happened, where she is, why all the X-Men are surrounding her. And it's a pretty casual conversation when it comes to everybody just kind of welcoming her into this new form here. And the big part of it is that she has questions for Professor X, or I'm not sure if he's known as a professor in this current era, but Charles Xavier. Basically asking, like, well, what's my mutant power? And they're like, we don't know. Like, that's just how new this whole thing is. And it's something that I'm pretty excited to kind of see what they're going to develop in this. We do
So
know.
her mutant power is different from her inhuman power?
Yeah, so the inhuman powers, with her having the stretching ability, she has a lot of like Ant-Man and Mr. Fantastic type qualities within her comic origins with her powers as being an inhuman. But as far as a mutant goes, and I won't give it away in case, something, we don't dive it. This issue isn't about Kamala, but this is her first reappearance as a mutant. So it's still a complete mystery. We see some of her inhuman powers on hand in here, but I think a lot of whatever is going to unravel of her mutant ability is from one of the secret titles that they put in the previews, because they had I think it was classified number 1, 2, and 3. They wouldn't tell us what it is. If you're a Marvel diehard, you pre-ordered those issues, which I did. I had no idea what they were. I'm glad I pre-ordered them because they end up being Kamala, Ms. Marvel, the New Mutant series. So she has a mini series coming out, co-written by Iman Vellani, who plays her in the MCU. Somebody who just 5 years ago was, her grandma was making her a homemade costume of the comic character, because there wasn't a costume that would exist in Halloween or Target, Target stores or anything like that. And then just a few short years later, she has her own TV show. She's in an upcoming movie, and now she's getting to co-write the character that led her to become the character. So following this journey is going to be pretty fun. So like I said, there's not a lot about Kamala here, but this is definitely your first. If you are a fan, this is your definitely one of the boxes you want to check off to jump into her story. But yeah, ultimately, just jumping into all of the awful stuff, I thought it was going to be a pretty fun issue, because that's what I thought these galas were, which they were. But this one, just halfway through, just stuff hits the fan, and characters start melting and dying and being tossed around and invading, and so many things happen that this is definitely the first huge chapter of this Fall of X for anybody that is following. But yeah, it was definitely a lot of fun with having experience with the House and Powers of X. At least when the series were starting, I wasn't real lost on it. I think it was just fun to kind of see where these characters were, especially one of my favorites, Kate Pride. She had a decent role in here, and it was kind of cool to see where she's been since I last left her a couple years ago. But yeah, this was a pretty excellent issue. To kind of list the credits here to finish off the review, there's a lot of names, so I'll try my best here. There's a collaboration between Jerry Duggan, Adam Kubert, Luciano Vecchio, Matteo Lally, Russell Dodderman, Javier Pina, RB Silva, Joshua Cassera, Chris Anka, and Pepe Larraz. We have Rain Barreto, CC De La Cruz, Matthew Wilson, Eric Arcianega, and Marte Gracia, and virtual calligraphy, Tom Muller with Jay Bowen. That list It's a collaboration between all of those people for this extra giant-sized issue. This was a lot of fun. I'm glad I wouldn't have picked this up if Kamala had nothing to do with it. It ended up being a purchase that was fully worth it. So that is the X-Men Hellfire Gala 2023. All right, we'll jump over to Kirby for your selection. What you got?
Well, we kind of got some similarities here because I got new characters, and Pepe Larraz just happened to be the artist of the thing I'm going to talk about, and you mentioned him as one of the collaborators in your book. But by Mark Millar and Pepe Larraz, we got Big Game #1. This was a huge surprise, a lot of fun. The sequel to Wanted is finally here after 20 years of waiting. Kick-Ass, Kingsmen, The Magic Order, Huck, Nightclub, The Ambassadors, and all your favorite characters are together for the first time in the crossover event of the summer. I never read that before until I got this issue. That wasn't part of the pre-order layout, but I noticed when I pre-ordered issue 3 or 4, it just happened to have the characters from Nightclub on it, and I just not too long ago on Crimson or on Under the Cowl of MS reviewed Nightclub issue 6, the final issue. That was a fun run that they did. A little experiment with. This was Mark Millar and Juanan Ramirez. They did $1.99 for every issue until the 6th issue was a double issue, and that one ended up being $4. But well worth it. Wonderful run. Great new look at vampires, kids into parkour and all that, trying to get social media pumped up. Ends up getting paralyzed, laying in a hospital in a coma. Vampire comes, gives him a second chance. He hooks up 2 of his best friends, and then all kinds of chaos happens. It's a really fun run. I suggest everybody checking it out that's into that. But Big Game, we jump into finding out that all the villains decided to finally get smart enough to group up and take out all the superheroes. Instead of going one-on-one with all your superheroes, just gang up and take them out one at a time. And that's what they did. And so the world was pretty much leveled out. It sounded like they make it sound like they wiped out all the superheroes, and now there's new superheroes coming to life and being born and freshly getting powers, all that stuff. And it's going to be crossing over with all these other characters along in this world. But we also do find out that there are some heroes from our past that are still around that we're going to find out more about later on down the road. But this was really well done. Lots of fun twists and turns, lots of characters I know very little about, and then finding out that some of the characters I was just getting into being pulled into this realm, and I'm really glad I did decide to jump onto this one. But yeah, Mark Millar's been doing
Kirby, can I ask you?
Yep.
Mark, so out of all those Mark Millar characters, like this is his end game. What is your least favorite comic from that universe and your favorite comic? Because he's a divisive character.
That's hard because I know I've read a lot of his, but I can't mentally bring him out. I mean, Nightclub's my favorite new one, but yeah, I'd have to have a list to look at.
Do you have a photo gallery in the back of the issue? Because a lot of times in the last pages, he lists like everything.
It's all newer ones. It's like Stomps. I've never heard of this run. This must be something that's just starting to come out. They have a Big Game or Nightclub and the Ambassadors, which the Ambassadors, all I got to check out was a free comic book day comic on that one, and that's a run I did want to get the trade for. But yeah, those are the only ones. And Nemesis, Nemesis Reloaded, which is one of the main characters in the bad guys, the villains group in this book. So I'd love to learn more about him, because he's like the the main assassin for the group. So
Mm.
I need to know what his whole backstory is on it. But yeah, I
Yeah.
can't
The
think
original
of
Nemesis is memorable.
yeah, and everything I've ever picked up from him in the past was like out of dollar bin comics and stuff, and I've talked about him on my podcast, and I've loved every one of them. So it'd be hard. I'd be hard fought to find one probably that I didn't care that much for, but he was a big surprise for me because it just felt like when I first got introduced to him. I hate saying it this way. He just seemed like more like I'm a big fan of Svengoolie, so I'm a fan of B movies and stuff. I considered him more of a B comic creator, but once I got into it, I fell in love with his world and everything that I got my hands on. So I can't really say it's B comic output, but that's how I looked at him at first. I just didn't know this creator that much, and so go ahead, Anthony.
I was just gonna say because I know I followed him. I have pretty much everything. I've got to meet him twice, and Mark Miller, after kind of planting his roots into Marvel and DC and just doing all the big events, and he basically did everything any big comic creator would want to do with superheroes. Giving him that opportunity to jump in and start creating his own characters and not needing to go back. And whether or not some of these are included in the big game, mine's in the pile yet, so I have to read it. But talking about his creator own stuff, American Jesus, Chrononauts, you've got Empress, the Huck, Kick Ass Hit Girl, Jupiter's Circle, the Kingsman series, Magic Order, let's see here, MPH. There's some of these things that maybe aren't part of this that are held up rights wise. Prodigy, Reborn, Sharky the Bounty Hunter. I think we talked about.
Darky is probably one of my. Yeah, now that you say it, that's got to go on my top.
Super Crooks, Superior, the Ambassadors. Going through. Yep, and there was one more. One that's my top. Oh, Starlight. That one I think is held up rights wise. It's somewhere else, but Starlight, he's got
Oh, really?
sci-fi book.
That's a great book.
Yeah,
I didn't know it was a rights thing though.
like I know, like I think movie wise, because once Mark Miller made his big Netflix deal, I think Starlight and like Kick Ass were like the two things that were held up at other studios. So I'm not sure if that stuff is not included with his comic stuff too, just because I think it's all under one big envelope, if I can use a poor analogy, envelope. But yeah, it's anyways, that's just kind of a highlight reel of some of the stuff that may be included in his big game. So
And Kick Ass, I don't know how much he had to do with the movies. The movies kind of dropped out for me. It's like they started out strong and then kind of fell down. But the comics, I enjoyed all the Kick Ass comics I've touched. And I'm sorry, I will always say Millar instead of Miller because it's spelled Millar. You can have your name spelled Joe and call yourself Jim, but I'm gonna say it the way it's spelled. So.
and go ahead.
I say, yeah, Miller, like I don't think it's a secret that he kind of writes for movie pitches now. Like he gets the best artists in the industry and then does a 6-issue series that's usually pretty solid. Like I think even the worst Miller book I've enjoyed. But it is almost always self-contained, maybe a little tease at the end, but it's almost always movies. And it's kind of like what Kirby was saying. I don't know how much it's involved because Kingsman was a little bit different from the comic. Kingsman 2 was much different. If anyone's seen Wanted, the comic and the comic and the movie are basically just share a name. If you've seen a Secret Service or Kingsman, like it's like the director read the first page, then put it down. He's like, all right, I got an idea.
And some of that, just because I happen to know a lot about him, and with Kick-Ass, going back to what Kirby was mentioning, is that while all the changes that they would make in the movies, Mark would say he worked with the director to the extent of telling him like, hey, you got to make your movie. I made my comic and I don't do what you do. And that director would end up going on to like taking over and doing like the Kingsman stuff and the prequels. And So a lot of it, yeah, is just kind of doing all the blueprints. Not that you want to just call comics blueprints, but essentially what Winston was saying, that tailoring this stuff to be big time movie properties. And there's an American Jesus TV show that I think is gearing up on Netflix coming soon, and he's been revisiting this like Nemesis, where 20 years after the fact and doing new volumes of these older characters that kind of reinvent them while while keeping it canon, but then kind of giving them a fresher look. But anyways, there's a lot of stuff going on, and especially what Winston said, working like Mark will say that he goes, all right, what big artist from Marvel and DC should I steal next? And people, because he gets them, and if he can get them a cut of the proceeds when it comes to co-creating stuff, and he's kind of used
Yeah,
his
like
position to kind of get to that part. Yeah. Anyways,
Yeah, I'll keep reading the books and considering the movies.
there's a lot of stuff out there. But yeah, both. I think issue 2 is out at the moment. I got both of them sitting on my stack. So cool. All right, let's jump over to Katie. What you got for us?
All right, I have Agent Gates and the Secret Adventures of Devonton Abbey.
hmm.
All right, so this is going to need a little bit of a setup. Y'all remember Downton Abbey on Masterpiece Theater? Right, so I love that show. It's a great show. It starts out being, more historically based, like they're dealing with like the Titanic and World War II and the Spanish influenza. And then by the end of the show, it's a lot more like very soap opera-y and about the drama between the characters and stuff. The main family in that show are the Crawleys. They live at Downton Abbey. And then because, they're from the aristocracy, and at this time in England, all the great houses basically had a staff of servants that were paid to like take care of the family. So the show is split between the Crawleys, who are upstairs, and then the staff that's downstairs. Not related to upstairs, downstairs, but also a great show. Anyway, I was on a tangent about Downton Abbey, and I was like, I wonder if there's any Downton Abbey comic books. And I figured probably not, because like that's just they're just not really a good match. But I went online and Amazoned it, and I came up with this parody. Now I bought it, and I'm like, I was unsure if I was gonna like it, because I'm like, okay, parodies can either be really good and spot on, or they can just be like destroying the source material. But the people who wrote this, who are Carmen Subiyaya and Kyle Hilton, seems like they actually enjoyed the show, because they took the characters and then made their own story. So the main character is Agent Gates, which is parodying John.
Katie froze up a little bit. We'll see if her video catches up. I'm not sure if she can hear us, but we'll wait to see if this corrects itself here. Let's see here. All right. I personally have never seen Downton Abbey. I know, I got a couple friends that are really into it. They've done a couple movies, I think, for the theater that, like, but I think
Yeah.
it's a whole commitment. I just haven't done any of that. But yeah, any of you guys check out Downton Abbey at all?
I
Heard
have
it.
not. It is my mom's favorite television show,
I
but
think that's
yeah, I have not
probably a
watched
good quote for almost anybody to say. So,
it.
Kirby, does
I've
you
heard of
any-
it, but I have not watched it. No,
her
which
video?
is unusual because the wife watches. We got BritBox, and we watch everything on that channel. So.
Well, for anyone listening, her video had jumped out, but she may pop back in. So we'll just kind of just wait a little bit before we'll jump over to Winston, but we'll still give her, because sometimes when her video pops in, to her, she may not have left, and she might just still be, rolling. Hopefully she's not talking to us right now, but
I know a really good show that's coming. That I think the new season's out now. But what we do in the shadows. That's a lot of fun.
on my
I feel
long list, I've never seen
really
it.
really goofy look on vampires living together, and
That's the Taika Waititi
yeah,
produced show or something. So
Are you a big vampire guy, Kirby? Because I don't know you that well, but you've said 2 vampire things so far.
Well, my wife is. We used to have an old farmhouse, and three of the four upstairs bedrooms was just her vampire rooms, and
Wow.
she's got a collection of Dracula books, just Dracula, where I don't even know. She's got 120 different Dracula covers and books in that
Wow.
collection already. Yeah, we got.
Yeah, to call
But she,
Shelley a big Dracula fan is a huge understatement. So
yeah, she is a huge vampire fan. I was a huge zombie fan. And because of the comic books, and she bought tons of them but never read them, and I'm doing all
Mhm.
these review shows, like, well, I might as well read these, and then I got sucked into them. So now
unintended.
there's so many different versions of vampire comics constantly coming out, and just a few zombie ones. So I gotta read the ones I can.
All
So
right.
have you read sorry, go ahead.
Nope. You go ahead.
All right. Have you checked out Redneck?
Yeah, I checked out that a little bit. I
Donnie
haven't got
Cates?
fully into it, but
Yeah.
yeah, it's a series I want to get deeper into.
So look.
Speaking of red, is it Red Dark?
Dark
Anthony,
Red?
Dark Red? Yeah, Dark Red is a wonderful series of a vampire janitor at a gas station,
That's a
ends
Timmy
up traveling throughout the world, or throughout the United States, and crosses over with all kinds of creature crossovers, and we get all kinds of wonderful characters, not just your normal werewolves and stuff like that. We got things that have the Cthulhu parts to the human form and all that, and just all kinds of strange things are coming into. And now they just, in the last previews catalog, they had a trade, I think it's a trade paperback or a single one-shot issue that's coming out. They're finally doing some more Dark Red stuff, so I'm hoping they bring that series back, because they had a long ways they could have went with that yet. So
That's awesome. Yeah, that's a great premise. I haven't heard of that before.
yeah, that was a really fun twist. So.
I just sent a message over to Katie, and pun intended, I just said we're just vamping right now, which literally is what we're doing. But yeah, I just told her if she ends up coming back or whatever the problem is, then we'll cycle her back in. But until then, if Katie does return, I mean, it was a good cliffhanger, definitely.
It was.
But yeah, we will jump over to Winston. So Winston, once again, for those listening, check out the last video episode in our feed over on YouTube, because you'll find that Winston came here to talk about his, as he's holding it up there, the Haunted House, a love story, and very happily accepted the invite to carry over into the proper club episode. Gave him a quick little insight on what it is, and you were pretty quick to just say, "Hey, I want to talk about this." So, what do you have for us today?
Yeah. I have Peacemaker Tries Hard by Kyle Starks, Steve Pugh, and colored by Jordi Belair. Oh, and Katie's back.
Yeah, we'll see what we have here.
Can wait.
We'll see if Jim pops up in the video for her. Maybe they swapped microphones or something. You know, through some of the technical difficulties, maybe there's some kind of supernatural thing happening. Whether she may be able to hear us, but we'll continue on with Winston, and if Katie does return, we'll come back to her. So Peacemaker
Tries Hard. 4 issues are out. It's kind of a continuation of the TV show, if anyone saw that. Having earned his release from the Suicide Squad, Peacemaker wants to try and do normal superhero stuff for a change. Unfortunately, everyone, including the bad guys, thinks he sucks at superhero stuff. But when busting up a terrorist ring introduces Christopher Smith to the cutest thing to ever walk on 4 legs, he finds the unconditional love he's been denied his whole life. That is, until the dog is kidnapped right from under him by a supervillain who has some very heroic plans for Peacemaker's brand of ultra violence. So I cannot recommend the series enough, especially if you love the show like I do. It is hilarious. It has a great heart, and the art by Steve Pugh is just incredible. Like, he knows his anatomy, but is able to do it creatively like exaggerate it for comedic effect. You have Peacemaker making some great zany faces. Let's pull up like that one there. Like it is just, and it's this wacky side story within the DC universe of him basically getting hired on the work a dumb mission and falling in love with a French bulldog who wears black and white like a tuxedo, so he's named Bruce Wayne. And because it's the only thing in his life to ever show him love, he devotes his life to it. And a villain, I won't say who, kidnaps the dog and wants the DNA of Deathstroke. And that's the tease at the end of the issue of how is this stupid idiot that everyone hates going to somehow get the DNA of Deathstroke the Terminator. It is just been an amazing book so far, and I can't wait for the next issue.
Kirby, you had picked it up, correct? You had talked about that
Yeah,
one?
I read that first issue and I fell in love with it. And I hate John Cena because he made me like him with the Peacemaker movie. I never cared for him back. I'm a huge wrestling fan. And I just wasn't big on the character. And he just keeps pushing me to like him more and more as he keeps doing more things. But yeah, that first issue was wonderful. I want to pick up the rest, but I was kind of waiting for the trade. But yeah, it's
After Kirby talking about it, I had picked up issue 1 and it's been buried in the pile. But when Winston talked about that he was wanted to talk about it, I found it out of the stack. I'm like, I got to read it, and yeah, I pretty much, ditto everything that you just said because yeah, it's a lot of fun. If you're a fan of the Peacemaker TV show, it's that same vibe and very hilarious, very uncensored with the language and stuff, and yeah, it's a perfect companion. I'm always trying to find stuff, to get people into comics, much like what David was talking about, and trying to get his wife into comics and things like that. And this is definitely, I think, a good example that if you find somebody who liked James Gunn's Suicide Squad and the Peacemaker TV show, this is definitely a good thing to throw into their hands. So.
yeah, I laughed a
Yeah.
lot, especially when he named the dog.
And then then the opening quote of the show I pulled from that first issue because they had talked about the muscle cake. The cashier was just he had all of those big giant canisters of like the muscle whatever the powder, the muscle powder stuff,
The
and
protein powder.
Yep.
yeah, the protein powder, and then a box of the instant cake mix, and then joking that that he's making a muscle cake, and he's like, "Is that a thing?" And he keeps asking throughout the issue if muscle cake is real.
Yeah, it was just before we started. He gets back to his trailer, and his parole officer has to explain that instant cake isn't instant, and because Peacemaker is like, "What do you mean? You just need water?" And he's like, "No, you need like an egg, and you need the bacon." He's like, "That's not instant."
Yeah, you need the oils. You got to grease up your pan, and like, yeah,
So dumb,
Yeah,
yet
this
so
is
lovable.
I am a huge fan of Kyle Starks. Like everything he puts out is amazing. So funny, so action packed. Basically, when I was describing my ideal books, it's basically anything Kyle Starks writes.
I
I've loved everything I've touched of his so far.
yeah. Speaking of Kyle Starks, I don't know if I ever showed this on the show, but I unburied it when I was looking for Peacemaker, and it was a perfect pairing. But I had commissioned him to do a Don Greenwood from my favorite comic series, Silver Surfer, by Dan Slott, Mike and Laura Allred. And yeah, so this was a Kyle Starks original commission I had. So I just happened to see it today. So now that we talk about it, I figured, yep, I got to show that off quick.
That's incredible.
He's awesome.
That's
Cool.
a great character to get.
Definitely. And so Katie is back for us here, and her audio is unmuted, so I think we'll be good to go with audio. Katie, how you doing?
Sure. Frustrated. I am paying for 2 internet services right now, and I don't know what happened. I just ran a speed test, and it's like, oh, you have 30 megabytes per second. So who even knows, man? I'm tired of this. Anyway,
you're loud and clear right now. So let's.
okay, great. I actually ended up really enjoying my book. I feel like they did enjoy Downton Abbey, as well as clearly writing kind of mystery stories and spy stories. It's an unusual pairing, that's for sure, but it actually worked. We have the senior servants are members of Her Majesty's Secret Service, and then Lady Grantham, the Dowager, is also in the Secret Service, and they're trying to take down some bad guys that are led by. In the show, the guy's name is Thomas. In the book, Thompson is what they're calling him. He is working with some bad guys from Bosnia and Sarajevo, and they are going to try and start up what will be known as World War I. But don't worry, they are thwarted through our heroes' actions, saving the day. I enjoyed it. You have to know Downton Abbey to enjoy this book. Otherwise, you won't really get like much of the humor or why it works. So I don't know that I'd recommend this. Like, oh, if you like spy stories or detective stories, but if you're in the crossover of people who enjoyed Downton Abbey and also like comic books, check this one out. It was a pretty unique read, but you know what? I'm not mad. It was actually pretty fun. So that's Agent Gates and the Secret Adventures of Devonton Abbey by Carmen Subiaya and Kyle Hilton, and it was published by Andrews McNeil Publishing. Check it out.
Excellent. Glad you were able
Would
to
you
make
recommend?
it.
Yes?
Would you recommend this to someone that loves Downton Abbey but doesn't like reading comic books? Because that would be my mother.
Yeah, I'd say that they could give it a shot. I would say there's probably a 60-40 chance whether they're going to like it. But if they love Downton Abbey and are open to it, then yeah, go for it.
All right, thank you.
Of course.
Cool. Well, that is going to do it for the weekly reviews. I believe everybody, we each just had one. We're going to move on to the news segment right after this.
And now the news.
All right, welcome to the first part of the Fan Expo Chicago 2023 review. Anytime I do these, mostly through the Chicago convention, sometimes with the MightyCon conventions, I've never joined with somebody who I saw at the show that kind of came back. I fit them in the suitcase, and I had had an extra carry-on and all that kind of stuff, and brought Winston to the club here. So what we're going to do is kind of talk about our experiences. We may have very different aspects of me as a fan, as a customer going through, and then you've got Winston Gambro here, who is there as an artist, a writer and artist, hanging out at the table. So I will kick it off to you first. If you kind of want to talk about your experience with this convention, if you've done this one before, just kind of conventions in general as a fan and or creator, feel free to jump into it.
Yeah, of course. Thanks for having me on. Yeah, so I'm a creator. This was my first time at Fan Expo, but I've done a couple bigger shows like C2E2 and Super Expo Miami. But I thought the show was okay. I had some people with more experience say that it wasn't a very good show. I personally did good, but I think a lot of it is just because every time I do a show, I kind of learn my pitches better. I have better merchandise that might attract more people. So that's just why I did better. There definitely were a lot of lulls in foot traffic, and like a lot of Fan Expo shows, people are not really there for comics. They're there for the celebrities. So yeah, why would you want to why would you want to read an indie comic by a guy you've never heard of when Henry Winkler is 20 feet away?
It's funny you say that, because that is literally the one celebrity I got a photo with that weekend. So just because you mentioned it, I'm going to grab the photo. I was going to save that for one of my later ones, but
Please do.
It works perfectly. But anyways,
did you meet him for like the Fonz or Arrested Development? What are you a fan of?
Honestly, more for Arrested Development. I definitely appreciate, I've seen, Happy Days reruns, and stuff like that. But Arrested Development and Barry are the things that I really like him in. But yeah, you talking about this convention used to be Wizard World for many a years, for as long as I've been going, for almost 20 years that it's been a Wizard World convention. And towards the last couple years, even pre-COVID, they started to kind of dwindle down and kind of get, less entertaining. And even whether it's the celebrity or the artist alley, they both kind of took a hit. C2E2 was always the main draw because personally for me, I think that's my favorite show to go to, and they definitely have one of the biggest and best artist alleys. And looking at this convention with Fan Expo taking over, the celeb list was huge with your Back to the Future cast, your cast from National Lampoon's Vacation, and your Star Wars people, like their animation, all the voice actors, and there's so many people. But I purposely am like, I'm going to pick one person out of there and spend the rest of the time in Artist Alley. But yeah, I can back it up with saying that the Fan Expo one, most of that is drawn by the celebs, and it's interesting to hear the take from somebody who is on the other side of it at the Artist Alley. But go on.
And I'm still a fan too. Like I wanted to meet only 3 creators, and I actually had a hard time finding them, which a couple people were looking for me, and I heard this was a common theme throughout the weekend, that Artist Alley was just oddly proportioned and oddly run, so much so that I was there all opening hours, and I was looking for Alvaro Martinez Bueno, who did Nice House on the Lake, and I didn't find him till Sunday because I just kept missing his table. Like, I walked to Artist Alley 3 times looking for him. I had to email his like art team.
Really?
Oh, and yeah, like he wasn't listed on the official app or anything. So it's just it's just frustrating that Artist Alley already is playing second fiddle, and they made it that much harder to find who you were looking for.
Yeah.
Did you happen to ask him if we're going to get more Nice House on the Lake? Are we going to get some more answers? Kind of like just stop.
I will. He told me something, but he literally said, "Don't tell anyone." So find him at a convention; he'll probably tell you.
We don't want to break news here, so and get in trouble. So yes.
He was very nice. I got a great poster by him. So yeah, I want to stay on his good side.
Yeah, and I definitely agree with that, with kind of what you're saying about how it did feel disorganized. There's a couple things too. When I thought I was in Artist Alley, and I'm like, wait, am I just in the vendor section now? But wait, there's more artists over here. So there wasn't just like C2E2 where it's very clear on all of the rows that you're going through. And so yeah, I definitely understand how confusing that was, and I like to follow a path because I do like to walk past every single table that I can, whether I'm interested or not, just to see if there's anything that's eye-catching, which is eventually how I met up with Winston here. We talk about it in the interview episode, but I had walked past his table, and he stopped me, and very nicely stopped me, and goes, "Hey, do you want a free drawing of your favorite superhero or character?" And drew up this little Silver Surfer here on his business card. So once again, check out the creator interview that we did in the previous upload on the YouTube channel for Crimson Cowl Comic Club. But yeah, that's what led to Winston being here. Is there any other kind of experiences or stories that you want to share with Fan Expo?
Man, I really wish I had more, but yeah, it was a pretty uneventful weekend, shockingly. I was in between a panel that sold Christian comics and a booth selling Christian comics and a booth selling a book that had Zombie Jesus. So I think I might have been the only thing stopping a brawl within the convention, but yeah, other than that, no major stories to tell.
Well, that's what I'm here to tell the other side of the table. But yeah, once again, it just feels weird that normally when I go through these things, it's just me coming back with a solo tale, So it feels cool to get the other perspective of it.
Yeah, I can't wait to hear your side.
Yeah. So based on what I got, this might be a 3-part thing for the next couple episodes where I just do a little chunk of it. So I set aside 2 people. Actually, before we do that, let's just because in the background I queued up my Fonz photo. So Henry Winkler is there. I was going to be there to meet Christina Ricci. I was going to the convention anyways because it's what I do every year, no matter. There could be 0 guest list. I'm just going to be there to be at a con and everything. And Christina Ricci had dropped out, and I'm like, all right, well, I guess I just, got my refund and got more money for Artist Alley. But I kind of looked at the list, and then, I've had the pleasure of meeting a lot of the big, Back to Future cast was there and stuff, and I've met them in the past years and stuff. But I'm like, you know what, I'm gonna pick one person, and Henry Winkler always had the best reputation of being the nicest guy, whether it's from fans meeting him or from his coworkers and peers and all that kind of stuff that you just always hear about how super nice he was. And in the photo op here, which I'm going to queue up for everyone to see rather than trying to show off a glossy photo. Here he is, giving a thumbs up, going up to him. When you do the photo op, it's a very quick experience. If you want to chat and everything, that's what you do your autograph table stuff for. But I just simply went up. I'm like, hey, thanks for being here. This is awesome. And then just in the most gentle way, he said so much in just two short words of just going, thank you. And it was just like, he was just so warm and gentle. I wanted to, adopt him as my grandfather, just like, I'm like, I don't want to leave, you're awesome. You're the man, you're the Fonz. And, for so many times, anytime I'm in Milwaukee, I usually am walking past the bronze Fonz and get a selfie with it and everything like that. And now I finally, have the real life photo. But in the very short experience, turned out to be an awesome photo. Yeah, he was cool. So that was my one celebrity meet and greet, but everything else was Artist Alley specific. I'm going to highlight Jenna Lee, who is known as the branding for a lemon leaf art. And this information will be available here, and I'll probably put it up on the screen as well. She had an awesome setup with she had a lot of like fantasy type things. I don't know if I'm accurately portraying it, Victorian. Like there was definitely a whole idea to her decor, like on her table, her background, what she was wearing. And what will give you a better example of what her presentation looked like was this awesome print I bought of Zelda from The Legend of Zelda, and such a gorgeous print there. And if you just look at what's represented on this print, that's basically like what her booth looked like. It was, a lemon leaf. Here on the back of her business
Ooh.
card, she has another gorgeous photo here for Link and Zelda there. So that was one thing. I just told her, I'm like, it just caught my attention because it just felt like I stepped into a magical little land, and it was just, whatever her table size was. But yeah, once I saw that she had a Zelda there, then I definitely picked that up. So that was that was an awesome pickup there.
Just
And
gave her a follow on Instagram.
yes, she's awesome. There's a lot of gorgeous work there, and a lot of cool canvas pieces. She had a lot of different sizing options, very organized and very, very cool. So Jenna Lee Allman. Once again, in post, I'll put up the information on the screen. And then the other one here, if I pronounce it right, John Dizon Photography. And John Dizon, which I don't know if these work on the here, but I got QR codes popped up here. So in case they do, here they are. And John Dizon, I walked past his booth and I'm looking at I noticed some Universal Monster stuff. And I went into the convention with a very Creature of the Black Lagoon themed idea. I definitely bought stuff outside of that brand, but I'm saving all that for the last installment. So I'm flipping through. I saw Universal Monsters. I'm like, oh, there's got to be a creature here. Didn't see one, but I'm noticing a lot of stuff, and I was kind of my brain was trying to catch up to what I was looking at because I didn't know exactly. Like, man, this art is like so realistic. It's so familiar. I'm like, what is this? And then he came over and talked to me, introduced himself, and he told me what he does. And all of a sudden, it just clicked where I'm like, oh, so this Savage She-Hulk that I'm looking at, he is the action figure that I have at home because he does action figure photography. And I think there's
Hmm.
the gray Savage She-Hulk version as well. Um, and but once he had said that, I'm flipping through. I'm like, oh yeah, I got that figure. I got that figure, and it was so weird just because I didn't. I guess I haven't seen that before, at least at the cons. And just gorgeous work, and just taking these beautiful photographs and posing these. and just doing some, light touch-ups in Photoshop and such to add some effects and, the glowing eyes and things like that and awesome backgrounds. And this stuff really popped. And yeah, I had a good conversation with John, and and I told him, I'm like, well, I was looking for the creature. It's like, well, in a week or two, the new NECA figure. I'm like, oh yeah, I know it's coming out, and we got it on pre-order and stuff. So he's getting excited because he gets to have a photo shoot with this figure that the community has been waiting for this new NECA version. But yeah, so had to highlight John here because yeah, it was just gorgeous photography on these action figures. And I have the figure here. I could go in with my iPhone and try to take a picture. It's never going to look like as gorgeous as this. Someone who's a skilled photographer definitely had their hands on this. So that was such a cool thing that I just wasn't privy to. I'd never really seen that before in person, at least at a convention.
I actually met his wife. She came by my table and the tables around me. Incredibly nice. And I could be wrong. I think she said this was his first show.
Oh, is that right? Yeah, I'm trying to
So yeah,
remember. Yeah,
maybe.
I'm trying to think if he had talked. We had exchanged information. Actually, uh, you and him, and I think two others were the ones that we got to talking and handed out the flyers and stuff to stay connected and gave each other a follow back and stuff. But yeah, yeah, cool.
Awesome.
All right, so yeah, that's just the tiny little preview there of the some of the artists. I have more stuff for the future weeks as I kind of build it up and tease my creature haul. Some with being original commissions and things like that. But yeah, the overall experience of kind of going back with kind of giving my perspective after Winston's there. Once again, the disorganization of just the rows and where people were located, I would 100% agree that that was very confusing. And it just got to the point where I knew I wasn't going into the main vending area of looking at action figures and stuff, that I was pretty much just staying in, I wasn't doing panels or anything. So I just circled around, and eventually be like, oh, I went down this row, but maybe I got to now turn this way. So it felt like a maze at sometimes, instead of just like the C2E2 and even past conventions of just the simple rows where you can find everybody based on the number. Um, but yeah, definitely with the haul that I got, and the money that was spent, and the conversations that were had, and some of the other people I'll feature in the future episodes. Definitely had a great time. I just did the 1 day for the convention. That one I used to do a 3 day on, but ends up getting pretty expensive when there's so many awesome things. And so I just figured, I'll just concentrate on Artist Alley for the most part. And yeah, it was pretty good. I'm trying to think if there was any other things I can bring up that won't dive into the future people that I bought from, but I think that kind of checks out. But once again, Winston was one of those booths that I stopped by, got myself a Silver Surfer sketch on his business card, picked up the envelope here, this comic zine, and then eventually led to the preview for Haunted House: A Love Story, which once again we talked about for what ended up being, I think, an hour episode after it's all cut down. So there's a lot of good conversation with Winston, and yeah, I think that is going to do it. Go ahead.
Speaking of haunted house, I actually did think of a funny story. So a guy is walking past my booth, and before I can even do my "Do you want to free drawing your favorite superhero?" that I say 8,000 times a day, he glances at my table, glances away, then glances back at haunted house and beelines right toward it. He's flipping through it. He asks, I make it maybe halfway through the premise, like the pitch, and he goes, "Oh, I'm buying it." And he introduced himself. His name is, I believe, I have it here. I believe it's Chris Fleming. He and he goes, Chris Fleming. I have hosted ghost shows since the 90s. He's appeared on Ghost Adventures and like a dozen other ghost programs. And I'm like, all right, I'm going to ask the question everyone's probably asked you. Did you ever actually see ghosts? And without like breaking a sweat, he just goes, "Oh, I was raised in a haunted house. My dad taught me to read comics to distract us from the ghost around us." I'm like, all right. So thank you, Chris. Thanks for checking out the book, and I hope you enjoyed it.
Here, I thought you were going to ask him the question that we would all expect, which is, which is your favorite dinosaur? But we're not going to say that here because Katie covered that awesome
Ankylosaurus.
question, and that answer's in that episode to give another plug. But yeah, yeah, cool. So yeah,
Ghost
that'll do it.
Ankylosaurus.
That'll do it then for this episode. It was a pleasure to have you on for the interview episode. It was awesome to have you join in with the club here. It felt pretty natural. We never know if someone's going to stick around or not, and it's fine if somebody takes off. But it's always cool to kind of welcome people in and get some more viewpoints and things like that. So, pleasure to have you. Thanks for coming by.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me. This is awesome. I love talking comics.
All right. And then just to do kind of a quick plug for your website and what's available there, because we're going to get into the plug portion of Crimson Cowl, but I would like to start with you first on where people can find you and purchase and follow your work.
Yeah, I'm at Winston Gambro on all social media. WinstonGambro.com is my site. WinstonGambro.gumroad.com is my shop. I got my new comic, Haunted House, a love story coming out about a sentient house that falls in love with the person living in it. Goes poorly. You can just ask your local comic shop to order it.
Cool. And I'll put this in part of the plugs because I completely forgot about the MightyCon stuff. I scrolled down my notes and I'm like, oh wait, there's the MightyCon note. So so yeah, that's a good wrap up for your plugs there. So this is going to be a quick preview for MightyCon, Milwaukee MightyCon, which is September 2nd. This we got a couple episodes to drop here, so this ain't necessarily a promotion, and did a little bit of a tease in the last video that was uploaded and stuff like that. But this is to let people know that Crimson Cowl Media will be represented at Milwaukee MightyCon. If you're a quick viewer of the episode, you'll get that information. David Gloyd and myself will be there representing Crimson Cowl Media. He'll be selling some leftover stock from the old storefront. I think he's going to have some sketches on hand, advertising the web comics that him and his son have done on crimsoncowl.com. And then I will be there to talk about the Crimson Cowl Comic Club. So I'm expecting the bookmarks to arrive. They made a crazy detour. They went from Illinois to Minnesota instead of to Wisconsin. And I emailed because they added a special note saying missed shipment. And I'm like, uh-oh, because they were supposed to be here yesterday at the time of this recording. And I contacted somebody and they said, well, it's not listed as lost, so you're still good. So I'm just like, well, it has a week now to get to the right place, which I'm confident it'll happen unless it goes to Ohio or something like that and overshoot it. But I'm expecting to debut the Crimson Cowl Comic Club and the Crimson Cowl Media double-sided bookmark, which has all the advertisement and stuff like that. If I had met Winston beforehand, I would have left a little blank space that we can draw something on there. But that's something I'm going to have to. Yeah. That's definitely a good gimmick for you there. And so yeah, we'll be there talking about the comic club, seeing if people want to, subscribe, check out the show, see if there's some local creators to, make contacts with, as we often do as we head down to those conventions. And then I had the opportunity of using this as my first time tabling as an artist. So once again, representing under the Crimson Cowl Media banner, but I will be selling prints. I have some examples here. Former guest on this very show, my friends over at Cartoonist by Night, Matt Rogers and Matt Fife, have Happy Astronaut, which I have queued up right here. And so I did a print here of their work, which I drew on Cartoonist by Night. This will also be printed in Happy Astronaut #2 coming out in October, but this will be the first time I'm selling the print version. Let's go back to that first one here. Kid Slapshot, another former guest. Oh, look at this. A half face here. Kid Slapshot from Troy Dungara, who has that series out there, and upcoming Jungle Drama, which is another creator interview that we had dropped in the video feed. But I did some fan art there and got the permission to do some prints, sell those at the shop or at the MightyCon as well. Speaking of the shop, Oh Yeah Comics was originally the exclusive seller of my Into the Gucci-verse, the characters co-created by Art Baltazar and Franco, and this is the thing that kickstarted the entire journey of making prints and going forward with doing this art thing and doing this experiment at MightyCon as an artist. I have no idea what's going to happen, but I'm excited to check it out. So I'll have the prints, and then I've been doing sketch cards over the last couple months. So original sketch cards will be on hand. Some of these may or may not be claimed or be personal ones that I'm keeping, but just kind of a quick example of some of the stuff I've been doing, bunch of different varieties. And I don't want to go too far because actually by the time this is out, this might all be released. So I can kind of give a couple teas on some Archie Art Challenge that both myself and Kirby have been participating in from Gillian over there at the Archie Art Challenge on Instagram. So we've been doing a bunch of fun stuff. Here's all the Firefly Archie ones that I recasted Firefly as Archie characters, blah, blah, blah. So anyways, a bunch of sketch cards, some prints, flyers, bookmarks, advertisement, having fun. That is a quick preview for Milwaukee MightyCon, September 2nd. By the time this is released, I'm going to try to get them out as soon as I can. But otherwise, everyone that's been following all of our social medias have known about that for a little while. I think that is going to do it. I think I covered everything of the MightyCon. CrimsonCowl.com for info and original webcomics. Crimson Cowl Comic Club on YouTube. Hit subscribe. We are almost done recording all of our Hellboy spin-off podcasts that are available only on YouTube, where myself, Kirby, and Damon, another club member, have gone through the deluxe library editions of the Hellboy books, and we have one more recording under our belts, and then we release 2 episodes, but once these are all done, then we can just kind of start releasing them in a more timely fashion. So subscribe on this very channel on YouTube, The Crimson Cowl, all one word, on Instagram, Crimson Cowl Comic Club on iTunes, subscribe, rate, and review, Crimson Cowl Comic Club at yahoo.com if you want to contact us and questions or comments, future letters page submissions. Kirby has a spin-off podcast called Under the Cowl of MS. If this is the first time checking out this our little show here, perhaps some fans of Winston are checking this out as well. Kirby, if you can kind of give us a little pitch on what you do over at Under the Cowl of MS.
I got everything. We got comic reviews, all kinds of different style comic talk. We got unpacking things, we got health things, we got MS and dementia related things. I recently did a Tank Girl unpacking. I got a bunch of stuff from them. My wife, I just got a big cardboard flat in the mail just a day or 2 ago. I guess she ordered some more original artwork from someone that's going to be a surprise unpacking for me to do. And yeah, I keep picking up more fun things. We also, I can't think of the other ones I did recently, but yeah, I got a little bit behind, but we got a pile of comics that we'll be reviewing this week and stuff on YouTube. And like Anthony said, check out Under the Cowl of MS with the underscore between each word for my Instagram. And you can see my Archie Art Challenge first 26 days or 31 days of pictures by the time you see this come out. So yeah, there's all kinds of fun things. Anytime I come up with a new idea, I just do it. I did wrestling videos and whatever I feel like talking about. Sports, hockey, football.
A little bit of everything. Cool. And then I myself, Anthony Latch, LAATSCH. I've got hobby artist accounts on Facebook and Instagram, so you can check those out. And then I'm also a co-creator and host of Cartoonist by Night, joining with Matt Rogers, Matt Fife, and Troy Dungara. We have a lot of episodes out there now, and by the time this is released, I'm planning to drop a Jack Kirby happy birthday episode because his birthday's on the 28th of August. I think it would have been his 106th or 107th birthday. So we sat down and drew and talked about Jack Kirby in an upcoming Cartoonist by Night episode. And so, yeah, a lot of stuff going on there. Once again, extend an awesome, big, giant, haunted thank you over to Winston Cambro for joining us here. It was a lot of fun. It was awesome to get to know you and hang out. And as we do to every guest here, we give you the unlimited invite to return anytime you want. If you want any comic book you just gotta get off your chest and things like that, you just gotta hit us up and let us know. And then anytime you have a project you want to talk about and promote, just let us know, and you're welcome back anytime.
Oh, thank you so much. I had a wonderful time, and I'll take you up on that invite for sure.
Yeah.
Cool, cool, cool. Yeah, and that is going to do it then for this episode. This whole time, I wasn't let into the Hellfire Gala because I didn't follow the dress code.
I've been hunting big game in a haunted house.
I've been fighting crime at Devonshire Abbey.
I'm just trying to get my dog back.
To be continued.
Thank you, Slimer.